Okay, just checking it out. I think that's good. Create broadcast. All right, everybody. It's been a very long time since I've made a stream, and I know things have been quite interesting over the last few
All
months.
right,
There's
everybody.
been a lot
It's
of
been a very long
of
time since I've made a stream, and
of
I know
FUD,
things have been
fear,
quite
uncertainty, and doubt
interesting
on
over
the
the last
software
few
engineering
months. All
space.
right,
There's
everybody.
been a lot
It's
of
been a
and
very
of
long time since I've made
I kind of
a stream,
fell for it like about
and
three,
I know
4 weeks
things have
ago.
been
Fear,
quite
uncertainty, after I was on the
interesting over the last
software
few
engineering
months.
space, was
There's
researching
been a lot
for a product. I'm
of
originally from the Dominican Republic. I kind of
and
fell
the
for it
country by
like
itself
about
is
three,
very,
4 weeks
very,
ago.
very,
After I was on the
let's say, kind of
software
old,
engineering space, was researching for a
and
product. I'm originally
well,
from the
a little
Dominican
bit
Republic.
outdated on
I kind
certain
of fell
technology.
for
The
it
country by
like
itself is
and I was
very,
looking for
very,
ways
very,
after I was on the
let's say, kind of old,
was researching
and
to fix my posture.
well, a little bit outdated
And
on
it's
certain
been a
technology.
long time
The
since I've
country
tried,
by itself
and
is
I was looking for
streaming.
ways after I
Stop
was on
streaming
the
because of
let's say kind
ChatGPT.
of
That's
old,
for another story.
trying to fix my
But
posture.
well, a little
The
bit
the
outdated
thing
on
is
certain
that
technology.
long time
The
since I've
country by
tried,
itself.
and
I was
looking
researching
streaming
for
after I
stop
was
creating like a
because of
financial
ChatGPT. That's
tracking app,
for
and you
another
may
story.
say like, Jose,
But
what the hell? You there are like
the thing
thousands,
is that
hundreds of
long
them. So
time since I've
why in the
tried,
world are you gonna
and
do that?
I was
And I was
researching
saying like,
for
well, because
stop
creating like a
in the
financial
DR
tracking app,
for another
and
story.
there's
But
no open banking
you
system,
there are like
and
thousands,
you still have to
hundreds of
manually
them. So
type in
why in the world are you gonna
the
do that? I was
notifications and
researching
everything
for
from the bank.
well because
And while
creating
there
like a
were like two
financial
apps
tracking
that
app
came out
and
recently,
there's no open banking
they
system, there
didn't
are like
cover my
thousands,
use
you have to
cases.
manually type in the
That what they would do is like they would either load
and while
your
there were like two apps that came out recently, there's no open
card
banking
statement,
system,
like your bank statement, they would load it and then would generate like the transaction for you. And then the other one would have like a paywall for different currencies, but they would connect with your email and read the notifications for you.
and then the other
Though
one would have like a
the thing
paywall
about that
for different
was that
currencies.
I was using our bank. I'm also like living abroad, and I needed a way to connect like different systems, and it wasn't cutting it.
So I decided to make
Was
like a little bit
that
a little
I was using our
investigation, see
bank.
how things actually went.
I'm also like living
And
abroad, I
and
found
I
out
needed way
that there
to
was this
connect
like
with
huge
people.
systems. There were
And
still
the thing
people like
about that,
wanting
so I just wanted to
for
was
them to
that
get a much better
I also I'm also
listing
like
service,
living abroad,
but I
and
found
I
out
needed way
that there was
to
this
connect
like
with
a
people.
little bit
There were still
knocked
people
off
like
when I
wanting
interviewed a
was
couple of people
that
and they told me like,
a much better.
I'm
I
used to
also
using
I'm also
listing
like
service,
code
but
to do that
I found
or
out
Claude
that there was
Claude
I
AI
was
like
a
the
little
platform.
bit.
It does take a while, but I interviewed a
Like
couple of people
why
and they
would
told me
I
like
actually go ahead
I'm
and pay for
used
those
to using
products?
listing
And
code
I think
to
that
do
from
that
that moment,
or
like
Claude
something
AI
went off in
like
my
the
head,
platform. It does take
and
a
began
while,
messing up
but
with me,
I interviewed a couple of
because
people and they told me like
just the
I'm
quick
used to
context.
using listing
I'm a
code.
software
And I
engineer,
think that
although
from that moment,
self-taught. I'm
like
originally
something went
a
off in
civil
my head.
engineer,
It just
and I've
began
been
messing up with
working
me
professionally
because
more like working on my startups, trying to get them out for now 12 years. Now I'm actually full time on another startup, and as a software engineer in the fintech space, working on my startups, trying to get them out for now 12 years. Now it's been crazy. It's been really crazy because
and as a software engineer
ever
in the
since that
fintech
moment,
space,
you like
for
you
now
never
12
thought
years.
that software
Now
engineering would
it's been
actually go
crazy.
away,
It's been really crazy
or at least
startup
that's how
because
you would think,
and
because
as a
it
software
became
engineer
like
in the
so
fintech
important.
space,
Everything, as Marcus
like
Reason said, software ate the
you
world,
never thought that
and
software
you wouldn't
engineering would actually go away.
think,
It's been really crazy
or at least
startup
that's
because
that it would be
and it became
jeopardized
like so
in
important.
just
Everything as
a
Mark
few years,
Reason said,
just a few years.
software
I don't
ate the
know, like
world.
how old is
And
software?
you
It's
wouldn't
like learned from
think,
1940s,
or at
1950s.
least that's
It's like
that it would
but
be
in
jeopardized
less than 100
in
years
just
now we have computers writing software by themselves.
software.
And
Like
ever since I got that moment, it began like ticking to my head that would this anarchists or people that would be the doomists, right? Would be right. Like it's kind of like over now. People are just gonna write all the code because you can get really far with prompting. People, I've seen a couple of people, curious people, that with enough prompting can actually do a lot of things. And then I was kind of like in this cool situation, and I was even like watching Mo Bitar, which if you know him, he just recently got out. Oh, I mean, he's been blowing up recently because he's been a little bit on like anti-AI, so we all stopped like drinking the Kool-Aid. And the thing it was that it did hit me. It did hit me though, and I thought for a moment that everything was just gonna be like gone. There was no hope whatsoever. And I went to like this doomsday scenario. Of course, if everything that you read is Reddit, Hacker News X, and you receive your information on YouTube, you may think that it's all over, right? But I kind of like bounced back, right? So a quick story about me. I am self-taught. I began working with software at least like with a hobby. On when I was back in high school around 2008, I think. And I stayed with that. I went to study civil engineering. Very long story, but in made short, my parents didn't want me to study software engineering, so I ended up like studying civil engineering, and I was forced to get to self teach myself on learning like to how to program. I began early like with HTML, then jumped a little bit on JavaScript and PHP, just a little basic. Then I went back to JavaScript because I've been on the web ever since. And then on 2014 to 2018, I was very full on ASP.NET and MVC. And through the startups that I ended up building, I began to learn practically almost everything, like C.NET. Began reading about databases, about how to do design patterns, especially like inversion control, dependency injection, and began moving more on the enterprise side. I began to learn how to host your application, even though I was using platform as a service at that time. Then I learned how to host it myself on a virtual machine, and progressively I began assuming more and more and more complex things. And here we are. What something started like as a hobby ended up creating becoming one of my big passions. In fact, I began because I love creating things, and I felt so pulled in when you ended up like creating two or three very simple different things on the so pulled in on the web, because until this day, and I don't know if anybody can actually respond to me differently, but I think that still JavaScript is the only language besides like maybe like Python or even Rails, but it's the only universal language that can be used without any special program or any interpreter, because you're using your browser. So what I mean is the feedback loop that you get from visual interactions using JavaScript, like there's nothing else in this world that goes with it. What I mean is that if you open HTML, create a simple HTML tag, you will like everything has a browser, even your phone. You can just open it and then probably like write some JavaScript code, and then you can see things happening. That's I don't think there's another combination of language stack that allows you to do that without having to install something additional, like an additional thing on your computer. So the thing is that I wanted to make this video because I'm planning on something a little bit bigger, but I wanted to make it though a little bit more on the ground because I'm planning on getting better, and I'm now like seriously thinking this as a 20 plus year long term, and how can we actually use all of these tools that we have available so we can skyrocket ourselves and get way above the ground, slowly but surely, but accelerate at the same time. It's like something in between. So now I know that I'm jumping a lot. That's one of the things that we're going to be fixing and getting better over time. So basically, I got into this situation in which I thought that everything was over and getting better over time. The funny thing was that I got so excited when ChatGPT came out because I began, especially when it went, I thought that GPT-4. Oh, I think it was when things started clicking and Sonnet 3.5 came out with all the cursor tap and everything. Because I was able to ask questions, deeper questions, and the answers were less hallucinating, right? And I love learning. I love learning. I began programming, as I said, because I love building things, and I didn't want to go like very complex or very deep. But then you ended up like loving the craft in the process. Plus, you got a lot of imposter syndrome along the way, and you begin diving into things. But now one knows a lot of things that back in the day when I started, I didn't know they even existed. And when come on, Jose, you gotta come and go right into the chase. Cut into the chase. So the thing is that you know I kind of bounce back from the idea that everything that this is the like the end, and we have to talk about how are we measuring things, because I think that we are how do you say it? We're using the wrong forcing function. I'm saying that although LLM benchmarks that are used, they are targeting for completeness and if whether they ran a test or not. But like I haven't seen like the quality, let's say, of the code and how evolutionary can it become. Because here's the thing: the one of the things that I've learned by solo working and with other people, though on multiple projects, is that when when you begin solo working and there's in engineering there's no right or wrong answer, there are justified ones. And with that, I mean that it may you may go against best practices for a certain time, but if you were conscious on why you did it because it was like some sort of trade-off,
with that, I mean
that's
that
perfectly fine. For example, if you're building an MVP, you're probably gonna lean into being a little bit more crappy, or at least that was the consensus, and not like not try yourself to get like so perfect because you want to try out how the market feels, how the idea is working, how the packaging works, the overall flows, and you just probably want to get something out there, and you probably don't care a lot about the code. And then you also have to think about evolutionary software because the only thing that you have for certain is that software will change. And while I have learned that creating earlier abstractions early in the code when you didn't have everything like perfectly laid out is also going to be problematic. You want things in a certain way that when you assemble it, it does allow you to scale. I am against on the moving fast and breaking things. I want to move fast, keep things working, and adjust as necessary, and then strangle the parts that are actually not needed anymore. Which is why I tend to follow the domain-driven design principles. For those who didn't know it, it was proposed by, I think it was like Eric Evans in his Blue Book 2003, in which you basically have like different layers on how your system works. I know it's more oriented to object-oriented programming, but still like the overall concept in which you separate your code into bounded contexts and have different layers that they consume each other like in some sort of onion pattern or hexagonal architecture. It is very beneficial, and I still use it to this day. It doesn't matter if I'm building an MVP. If I'm building like a throwaway software with some vibe coding, then obviously. But right now, I'm working. I decided to work anyways on the financial app that I was mentioning at the beginning, that whose purpose was just to track stuff
right now,
from certain banks that
I
other
decided to
apps
work
didn't
anyways on
have.
the financial app that
And
I was mentioning at the beginning.
I don't know if
Purpose
uh,
was just to track
Jesus
stuff.
Christ, I
Right
gotta
now,
make a much better
from
work,
certain banks that
and
I
I think
decided to work
that's
anyways
gonna
on
be
the
like one of my
financial app
goals
that I was mentioning at the
when
beginning.
working out on the content is like
I
having
don't know
much better
if
structure.
was
So I
just
have a
to
lot of
track
things to
stuff.
say
I
on
gotta make
my
a
mind.
much better work.
Though,
And I think
that's gonna be like one of my goals when working out on the content is like
I
having
don't know
much better structure. So I have a lot of things to say
I
on
gotta make
my
a
mind.
much better work.
Though
And I think
that's gonna be like one of my goals
the
the thing is
when working out on the content
that
is like having
whenever
much better structure.
so I have a lot. Let me see. Okay. The thing is that whenever so okay, so here's the thing. Why did I bounce back? Why did I think originally after like interviewing these people that I thought that it was gonna be the end of the world because a lot of people that I was respecting, they were either bouncing like, oh, now software engineering, like you're gonna be, sorry, you're gonna become a manager. I don't even watch the code or sorry or read the code anymore. I just commit. I trust everything, and then it kind of hit me. I was like, I ran something using Opus 4.7. It was a very humongous task. And it was on a backend that was built on Nest, JS, not Next. It's a backend service for TypeScript and JavaScript. And well, same thing. TypeScript that we're following some a pattern called command core responsibility segregation or CQRS. And the advantage of the backend versus the front end is that I feel that backend services are way more structured and easier to follow along than front end. All the logic has been recently moved more to the front end. Even if you're using some very thin front end client like HTMX, Datastar, or things like that. Like a lot of the interactivity actually comes from the front end. You got like the huge shape that you send to the back end. The back end is practically very thin. You just validate that all the inputs are in place and you store them on the database. Like actual logic, actual business logic is almost non-existent. That's one of the reasons why when I begin realizing that people think like AI is like the bread and butter of today, but the reality is that applications have become so much simpler because we have third party like APIs have become number one, like APIs have become very good, very good, and over the last few years. Like you have to write way less code to achieve things. Second, though, since the front has now more responsibility, let's say you have more interactivity, it is an app. It is an app. Your front end, it is an app. It already prepares your data you're going to send to the backend, and the backend just becomes like a data storage. You make some early validations, and then you probably like pull data from different sources, combine them, and then just and from different sources, I'm saying probably your database, and then you just present it to a user. Maybe things that would have been like a little bit more complex now are on a third party. People are using more than ever third party authentication services like Auth0, Supabase, Clerk, and things like that. You have even databases that you're not even managing anymore. So you got services like PlanetScale, you got like Supabase, the same Supabase that they're already hosted. They give you like PG pool, pooling mechanism and everything, and all of those logics that in reality they're not part of the domain or business model. They're more of like an infrastructure part of it, which because you had to like write all this tooling around, so if the database disconnected, like you could actually retry, but if it actually failed, then you would create like some sort of circuit breaker if you were using like distributed system. We're going to go into this domain. The thing is that I said all of that to mention is that the backend nowadays have a very known structure, especially if you use domain driven design into very basic ways, and you probably violate a lot of the principles, but you create something that is practical for you to follow. You're just connecting, passing data through a series of stages, making permission validations, and then inserting into the database and then retrieving. And when you run the models are now capable. I'm talking about right now GPT 5.5, Opus 4.7, or Sonnet 4.0. I love Sonnet, by the way, or Kimi K 2.6, which has actually been really good, and Minimax 2.7. Well, not that one, but Kimi K 2.6 has been good. Has been good, and they tend to follow kind of linearly what you've been built so far. So they follow the architectural pattern. The problem now becomes on an evergreen project is that they have like the way that I would like to have something structured isn't necessarily what the majority out there would do it, because I've come from like that. And I think that's what makes like every engineer very special is that you add your own flavor to things, because in the end you have multiple paths on you to achieve a certain goal, and the way that you structure things, that's why it may vary from person to person. That's why I always go to a project with an open mind, and I never try to impose my thoughts, like to make them impose to another project, or nor like bringing directly like another language like C sharp and bringing it to like to TypeScript directly, or to Go, or maybe Rust, because you have to understand what are the benefits and the downsides of each language, and what makes it really strong. I made that mistake a long time ago. So when somebody, what I want to say with this is that when somebody says that is doing something with the LLM, and they thought it was going to be over because they achieved something that they thought it was magical, I say that it can, but like we have no context whatsoever. Like, what was magical? It was it the piece of code that it kind of like read your mind, because we are already in an agreement that we would implement that, like that specific part of the program, because that's like the traditional practice. Like, for example, I don't know, I'm gonna use like TypeScript, but it's like so big, or something simple like as React. You know that you're going to be using like states to read from, I don't know, like from an input before you actually implement something like React hook form or some state management, but whatever. But it's like we already have those patterns inside, and the LM is just gonna do it. But when you're in an evergreen field project and you tell it like to follow like the best practices, it it may understand best practices from reinforcement learning they apply like for a serial project that probably do not follow your preferences. And the thing is that it it make like in my case, I've seen that it creates like some sort of discrepancy whenever it happens. So there was one time, I think it was like 3 weeks ago. I like please don't take my word for the timing. But when Opus 4.7 came out, I actually decided to throw it a really big and powerful task. I know that there are people that are saying Opus 4.6, Opus 4.7. I honestly don't know, and probably don't care for a lot of things, because I damn, I'm jumping around. But because the thing is that whenever I try to use the LLM, is that I'm trying to instruct the LLM to print what I have in my head. So the program gets structured in a way that I actually know everything that's happening. And if there are certain scenarios or parts in which I don't know, it's because I've already isolated that small block of code in which I would let the LLM run it wild, and I would just tinker with things because I don't have it like 100% clear. But I remember running Opus 4.7. It was like a freaking huge for me at least. Probably like for you guys, you probably have it like very small. But I remember it ran like for 20 minutes, which for me it's a lot. It generated 45 files, which is insane, insane. And I have no idea how many lines of code in the end. And I remember that I say like, holy shit, it actually got some things right. And I began like analyzing and studying, and I said like, wait a minute, a lot of this thing is crap. Why? What is crap? Because we could expand on that concept. Crap is whenever you write more software than it's needed, when there's like very little understanding of the entire context, when you fail to follow instructions. And I'm gonna expand on this right now, because there's this thing on, well, this recent, let's say, recent traction in which, or trend in which people are saying that you have to have very thin agents.md files or very thin markdown files, and let the LLM like infer the context and let it continue because it's going to do a great job. I don't know, Rick, about that one. I don't know, because the thing is that, right, I've tried both. It suddenly began on the Opus task. It suddenly began adding logs like this dot logger error on certain handling, and the Nest.js application was designed with oxide.ts, which or never throw or ts results, which basically adds like some sort of Rust error handling mechanism. It comes from a post called Railway Programming. I think I don't take my word for it, but again, and and probably the thing is that, so it helps you like deal with errors in such a flow state, in which if you got, let me see if I can find it. I'm gonna say Railway Programming. I don't know if, and I wrote programming wrong. Oh, well, but here we have it. Railway. No, it's not Railway. It's this one. So I love this thing. So it basically says that whenever you have like let's say the happy path or the wrong path, it like you may think that everything goes into two tracks. If something goes wrong, you kind of like short circuit something, then you send it back outside of the handler, and you propagate it to wherever it goes, and you need to and you let it handle properly. And the thing was that logging was actually done through the CQRS or the command bus or the main buses. Because one thing that for those that you don't know, the CQRS it was coined by Greg Young, And it basically, let me see if there's, I know Martin Fowler has something in here, but well, to make it like really simple, imagine everything works on the observable pattern, but let's say you got like a, what is this loading scene? Never seen it. From a Escadro? No, like never. We got this, right? We got this square. And imagine you got things that write and things that read. Oh, by the way, thank you for the follow, Odinakechi. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. The thing is that you got like this is the, let's call it the bus, and this is probably gonna go the command or query bus. Can be two. We have two in our fintech application, and you got here the commands, and you got here the queries. So the let's say like the gist of this is that whenever you have, so the gist is that queries happen 10 times more than commands. Basically, you read 10 times more than what you write. At least that's what I got from a book that I read called Architecturing ASP.NET Applications, which are pretty practically for a lot of things. You do like the main architectural patterns. You actually can apply it to almost any programming language. And the thing is that it says like, okay, let's separate the entire model. So if you're having a service, you're gonna have this thing called the command or query bus. And what it's gonna do is it's going to dispatch, or it's just gonna execute queries that are gonna read from the place and commands that are gonna write. And that distinction allows you to perform a series of optimizations in the sense that if you want to create caching mechanisms on the query side, you can like design more let's say more intelligent stuff or more smarty things that will let you cache the data and read it and retrieve it and show it and present it to the user. Or command buses can then delegate the dispatch events that then can be used with something called eventual consistency or strong consistency in the case that it saves immediately to fill in your caching layer, update it, or if you have like event sourcing, like or some sort of snapshot mechanism. So it allows you like to separate things. But in my opinion, in my experience, the very big advantage that it has, or the two big advantages, is that first, well, it has a series of advantages besides those. First, it allows you to extend the functionality of your system almost to the infinite without breaking existing functionality. Because when you create a command is basically a new file that's just going to execute instructions. Whether it returns or it doesn't return, that really doesn't matter. But for practical sense, I have everything that returns data. If you go and go for the purest, commands will never return you any information. Queries are the ones that actually return you, but I don't follow purist advice. I'm more on the practical, and when I follow this practical thing, commands actually write information and then you can return it to you immediately. And the thing is that when you have like a single file, let's say a service, huge service, a huge service, and let me see, and you have like a huge service, right? The problem, oh shit, it actually loaded and it deleted my thing. Let me just recreate it like really fast. When you have, let's say, this is the command, query bus, you got the commands in here. Oop, make it smaller, small, and make this a little bit bigger. You got commands, and you got queries in here. Crap, I have like a small child. He's like a year old. He's sleeping. Hopefully he's not gonna wake up. And now you got like a huge service file. I know I'm on a tangent right now, but I'm really passionate about this. Service. The traditional service. The problem with the traditional service is that you begin having methods on your service. You begin adding them. The problem with that is that it becomes a hot path on your application, in which, holy shoot, guys, give me. I'm sorry, baby woke up. I'll. Oh no, no, no! Wait, he went back to bed. Okay, he just laid down. He laid down. Okay, so you got a service, and you got a bunch of methods, and the problem is that this one becomes a hot path. The problem with the hot path is that now everybody begins to edit the file. It also begins to grow enormously, and it also has the problem that whenever you want to make, let's say, like a test or a change, and you don't want to affect existing users, you have to do magic things. You're probably gonna wanna like refactor in the same file, and you don't know if you want to rename the method that you did or create like a v2 method, and that gets very hairy, very hairy, and it begins to create like a big ball of mud, especially when you begin like depending on different things. But when you have like the CQRS or CQS pattern, you divide your files. You got your commands, you got your queries. Commands will do, and you will create like, for let's say like you split, you got like a bunch of method. Let's say really quick, find user. Okay, create user, update user, things like that. Now what you do is that you separate each of these methods into their own files. You send like these two to the command. Well, you send to a query. You send this one to the command, and now you create user command, update user command. And now what happens is that you begin like having like, yes, you have like a lot of files, right? But that's usually not a problem because you can find them, use it very easily on with the file searching. It also gives you the ability that without having to use those symbol matching really quick. Let me open VS Code to give you an example. I'm also using cursor. Okay, so say for example, I have, sorry, and I go Control P, hashtag, oh my God, pound sign, and you say, well, get a current user. You have to wait for TypeScript since this isn't, I want to know, I want to see if TypeScript haven't actually improved this. But you got to get a current user, it actually jumps to the thing that actually define the symbol. But in this case, you have files, which makes it actually easier to find. And you got queries, which does the same thing. And I'm saying everything because one of the powerful advantages that you got with the command query bus is that you're able to centralize certain types of logic. One of those logics is logging. Now you can, in one single place, you can create like a logger that will log every command, every query that you did. And I'm going to show you really quickly this repository. Well, this is a dead startup that I worked on for a year. My God. We can talk about that later. But here is a remix app with a, you say like how do you call this? Like a poorest man's backend. This is a monorepo. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. I'm going to close this. Open this in cursor. Oh well. But here's the thing. And this is a monorepo with, I think it was like NX. Yeah, it was with NX. They built it. And here's the thing. Say command. This is a very simple file. Everything. And let me say CQRS. I think I have it. Aha, the mediator. Because this follows the mediator pattern. So in here, I don't want to dive a lot into what we ended up doing, but in here we have a, let me see, yeah, this is the one. So we have like a simple file which everything gets registered into an object. If you follow the observable pattern, you can actually see why or how this works. And oh no, let me look for the auto mediator because I had a lot. This was a horrible thing to do. Yeah, this is like TypeScript. A lot of things. We're not going to work on that. But here's the thing. This is the simple command that dispatches everything. You would specify a type, which is just a TypeScript literal. And I'm gonna go here into a view. It was built with Remix v2, then migrated to React Router v7. And let me see if I can show you something in here. Yeah, anything in here can actually work. So this would be the command. You would define it like that. The arguments would be read. See, I can find it really easily. If I follow my convention, the send email magic link command would match to this one, and you would see like something really thin. But the good thing about this is that the dispatcher, which lives in here, is like this central point in which all the code is going to go through it. So I have decided I wrapped around the dispatch in here two things. I added a try and a catch. So if the code anywhere within those commands and queries blow up and I didn't properly handle it, my application will not get destroyed, and I can catch it in the worst scenario. And I have logging. The power of this is that now I have logging on my entire system. So I don't need to manually log things. And if there are errors, it automatically handles the errors, logs the error to the console or to the, oh man, I the names, like something like Datadog, like a or Grafana or things like that. It logs it structured that I can find it, because it also adds all the headers, although in case I'm using Cloudflare, like the CF Ray, everything, and it gets chained in the process. And everything does it for free. Everything does it for free. And that's like one of the big biggest things that you can do with CQRS with a command bus. Now the main thing, and I'm just gonna backtrack a little bit. I decided I used Opus 4.7 to run a humongous task, and in the end, ended up generating like some garbage code. Even though I explicitly told it not to follow certain instructions in the document, and it was very explicit, and then it said mentioned that. And what I was calling garbage was the lack of understanding of the entire code base. And I was using Cursor, by the way, which I've read online that it's been doing a much better work, a much better job as a harness than Cloud Code and things like that. And well, than Cloud Code, and so it apparently ran okay. But I began like to go and see the code, and it was like, huh, we could probably do things differently here. And I was seeing that it also like generated like too many abstractions, too many things that could have just been removed from the get go. And that's when I realized, and I began to understand that, man, like, slow down. Things aren't as bad as you thought, and just go back, keep going, keep learning on things. And if something happens in the future that like all of these skills are unneeded, you like there's not a single moment in time in the history of mankind that knowing where things came from aren't valuable. And this is very interesting because when I began learning to program, and this is something that I always encourage people to do, is that try to go with the least friction as possible that's going to give you the early wins, and that's going to create the things that you want. Because those early wins, it's like you get yourself like a small cookie that you eat, and that's what gets you into the mood of learning things over and over. And you're going to be learning from a very practical standpoint, and that makes everything else click much better. For example, because when I began learning and I began tinkering on things, I didn't know anything. I just began with simple HTML, then like some JavaScript. I didn't know about memory management. I didn't know about like design patterns or things like that. I didn't know about like properly handling like users information or things. Of course, I'm not saying for you to be to do the wrong things, guys. Come on, you always have to deal with PII, especially PII. Very careful, and please, passwords at least hash them using something strong like Bcrypt. Argon 3, Argon 2, I think. It's one of the most recent ones. It's been a long time since I've done some hashing, and salt them. Although Bcrypt already does that for you, it's good. Though you should try things, and what makes you, at least what made me learn a lot in the early days was when I began like making small changes and see how things work. Like, oh, what happens if I actually change this tag to this? What will something happen? And that's when you begin like to get all your knowledge. And until this day, it is true that for building real world applications, you don't need to know how memory is laid out. You don't need to know the OSI layer. You don't need to know whether like there you have to like handle proper database failures in case of certain problems, right? You don't need those things. Let me hold on. Let me cook because you can get really far away from doing simple scripting. You can get really far away now with prompting, but there's a lot of value when you begin to learn them. And from the entrepreneurial perspective, the trend that I began to see over time is that entrepreneurship, especially in the software world, since I've seen it, since I've grown from it, like from since 2005, is that it works a lot like real estate. Everything, when you have a, let's say, like a blanket, a huge blank or mass of land that's not worked, you can build anything. You can build the probably and people like start traveling. Let's say like you have like a road on the middle of nowhere, and you have people like going through it like but in mass, like 10,000 people pass every day. If you open a cafeteria of whatever, maybe it's the worst sandwiches that you've ever like eaten in your life. Since it's the only one, you're probably gonna eat or stop there because you have no other choice. Everything else being equal, okay? And the thing about that is that when software began, like all these silly ideas, like silly, right? Like Twitter or maybe something like Facebook or like social media or these like 1 pixel grid, if it, $1 for 1 pixel grid or things like that. The blog, they were actually very tough to build on the beginning. They were tough. You didn't have all the tools, all the programming languages that, all the APIs that you got today. Additionally, there weren't that many things. Millions, hundreds of thousands, or millions of sites are nothing in comparison to what we have today. And there were people that were browsing the web. Ads work differently. Like the entire dynamics, the dynamics of how everything worked in the past was very different. And as things came along, new business, I mean, the things that were like missing the gap, people began building things around it, and you had to become more clever. That's why nowadays you see people saying about niching down, because there's so much offer, so much noise, that you have to find some sort of differentiating factor for you to actually get out. Because coming up with a very novel or very different idea, it's kind of tough, because we are all focused, I would say, like in this huge imaginary box that a certain of things can only happen because of how business dynamics are currently working, and that box can expand on or shrink depending on the things that people end up doing that may be different, or the means that change. Like for example, we have 2D screens right now, like computers, but maybe we probably may see soon some sort of AR or mixed reality revolution. I'm sorry, Apple Vision Pro, but like the Meta Quest is kind of cool, and but still requires a lot of adoption, right? Oculus devices and everything else, and that may have like different dynamics than applicate like obvious application needs to be built. Well, when LMs came, right, the obvious, we had to build the obvious, right? Like code reviews, like now agents that are writing the code for you. And the problem is that we begin to think that ideas like are over because we operate on a single, let's say, radius of thought that we all consume from the same places information. We all hear the same people, and we end up reaching to the same conclusions. But it requires a very huge effort to think outside the box and to begin tweaking those things. And that's why I made the real estate example, because now you have this humongous road that was practically empty, now filled in with hundreds of millions of people. They are all offering the services. And you have to find ways that you can differentiate yourself, that you can it, go into it. Now, with that said, how is the software engineering world evolving, right? Because the thing is that something that I forgot, and it was true, and I would say like it began like more in 2015, 2016, when like the cloud, let's say the cloud migration, the migration to the cloud was already like on good trend, was that it wasn't a matter of whether it needed to be built. It was a matter, no, of whether it could be built. It was a matter of whether it should have been built. And that became more true as the entire technology space matured at a very rapid pace. Now we're having in 2026, I think that one of the problems is that we forgot. That's the main thing, is that in software there's the now for more than a decade we're already facing the question whether something should be built versus something that needs, well, we can build it versus something that should build it, that distinction. and and I think that that's part of the confusion that we have. There's also the concern, because I also think about this on the other spectrum, is whether things have gotten good enough so people aren't like, looking for much deeper solutions. And 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 that probably can be true to a certain extent, because let's say our people may say like, no, why would I pay for your software when a guy can code something for myself? It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to catch all those edge cases that you have, but I can design it so in my small space everything works in the way that I do. And I think that that's a market that probably that was targeted by indie hackers. Probably one of I you can include me in that one as well. Is quickly drying out, because there are going to be people way more empowered creating their custom solutions and going after those things, and software engineering in those aspects. I think it's just gonna fade away, the same way that Canva came and began eating some of the designers lunch. Because now if I wanted to make like some cool flyer for my kid, I probably didn't have to hire for a designer. Now, there's also the counter argument, in which you may say like those people wouldn't have spent the money anyways. Maybe just a minority. And I also think that's kind of true, right? A lot of the people who are writing the software today probably wouldn't have spent the money on a custom software anyways. And for those who would have, they are probably going after something serious, and are probably having some hiccups along the way when they begin seeing that the model doesn't behave the way that they thought they would do, and it would begin like eating things. And then that's when you would bring like a software engineering in. That's also very 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 true. Now, where I'm standing, I don't know if you guys know about Dylan Patel. He's on the consulting business. He's being looked for a lot, and I saw him for the first time on Andressen Horowitz podcast. The guy is amazing, by the way. He knows a lot about the LLM or the AI information business. And I think it was in the Dwargish podcast that I heard him say that what we're doing is raising the bar. And that simple phrase, like, I stayed with it, and it has grown a bit over the last few weeks. And that's some sort, and I've had it like for food of thought, and that's what I'm gonna tell you guys that, or ask yourself, like, what was the current standard before all these models became really good? Okay, now we gotta elevate those standards, and that's what's gonna make a software engineering much more valuable over time. Dynamics are going to change. I don't know how things are going to play out. I think that we should definitely, the way that I'm doing things right now is that I'm doubling down on learning more more software skills, especially on the lower level, trying to widen my knowledge, to better use the tools, by the way, and to raise the minimum bar of what a product coming out from me would be. Raise the bar. Raise the bar. For example, because now that there's a lot of slop, I know that a lot of people aren't a, the main problem really is that we always value speed, and there's like some sort of greed and fear of missing out, that if we do not execute as fast, we may lose the so easy money grab that it's out there. But in reality, when you have like business dynamics out there and you begin playing things out, you realize that it's still hard. That product was only a component of an entire system that you had to build. And the thing is that I almost lose I'm almost losing my train of thought. But the thing is that when, like, doubling down on all the skills and raising up the bar will actually give us an edge on the, not on the building size, because the thing is that we also need to rethink things, right? Because the question will now become is what's going to be the new standard. We already raised the floor, but what about the ceiling, right? Because the front end skills right now, people are practically chugging out the same designs over and over again. You already see it whenever you see like this. How do you say, like, this oval shaped bag? You know, it was generated by an LLM. And I remember even seeing Theo a couple of days back deleting the front end skill from from Claude. I'm like, crap. If he's doing that, I know why he's doing that. I know why he's doing that. And I think it's more about racing, like taking more time on, that good quality of code. What is a good quality? Like, call code again. What we said, what was crap code? What is good quality? Good quality is whenever the decision that you made on the moment was the best justified, that produces the best evolution for the software you're building. Basically, we can build products that look much more feature complete with our knowledge than we used to do them a while back. And I think that's one of the things that when we're building an MVP, now when we're building something, instead of just going to 1,000 miles per hour, we go to 120 miles per hour. But the quality that's gonna come out there, like the interactions, the attention to small detail, that would have taken a lot of time, we can now implement them. Because, for example, the way that I'm using AI coding, I know that some of you are just joining in, is that I try to translate what I have in my head into the code as fast as possible. And for that, there's a lot of back and forth, of course. I now start with a very thin agents.md file. I do go I also try to create the initial files myself, try to ask it to begin like following those patterns, and then just let it go, let it go, and and continue. You fine tune it with the agents.md or the claude.md file, and, and go back and ask it, and you're gonna see the limits of the model as well. But in the end, you're gonna have like this software that would have probably taken you a longer time to build, just ready to go from the first one, from the get go. And if you have to make like some sort of modification, refactoring, you already know what you are looking for, and you just ask the model to do it for yourself. And I forgot the guy who made the name of the guy who made Pi. Let me see, Pi.dev creator. I love him. Mario. Mario. Yeah. Mario. Mario Sekner. When Mario, I heard his talk on Pi.dev, that when he mentioned the he was creating Pi, which by the way for me is my favorite hardness. That and not the fact that for the simple fact that this is fast. It's like something. It's I felt like going for on video games that you go like from 30 FPS to 60 FPS. You don't know what is it, but like the fluid motion and everything makes the game feel entirely different. And that's one of the things that I love about Pi. It's like it's fast compared to Codex, to even to Cloud Code, and to the Kilo CLI from Kimi. So the thing is that I think that that's the direction we should definitely go. Will there be a moment in time in which it would be so good enough that people won't care because hardware has become so fast, software has become like good enough that it doesn't matter? What I'm gonna say about that is that we're gonna become much better marketers, and we're gonna create a new need for people to raise even the standards even higher, and just create something even more amazing that people will want it, and we'll have to pay for it, and we'll have to push the boundaries. Because something I was even reflecting on a couple of days back is that while it's true that now becoming like an indie hacker and going like for really niche things are more difficult than ever because people can now craft their own code, which by the way, a parenthesis, another thing is that a lot of people are never going to do that. They're never going to do it. They're never going to write a code. They're just, you want to, sorry, they're just going to buy something out of the box. But, but the thing is that, man, I'm losing my train of thought. I think that this caloric deficit that I'm going on right now is actually affecting my head. Anyways, though, the thing about raising the bar and people feeling like it's kind of good enough. I was on I remember, like for indie hackers, one of the things that I'm seeing is that while it was true like all this niching things are gonna be built by people that are already like going to Cloud Code, the opposite is also true. There are way more ambitious projects that we were not able to tackle because we were only one, or people have very few resources that you can now tackle, and you can go ahead and do them with with what I've been saying. And that should also open certain opportunities as well. So what am I trying to figure out right now is that number one, I'm not going to predict the market on where it's going. Although I do see where certain trends they're going to go. Like for example, I think that agents are here for to stay. And I also see, for example, in the future that everybody's going to have their own personal assistant. ChatGPT and Claude probably are going to have a dedicated tab, something like OpenClaw, but with much more restrictions that's going to enable people to do their things. And with Anthropic now, and I'm thinking Anthropic, although I do believe that OpenAI has much better product around ChatGPT for all the things that they've done. And Anthropic has been catching up really good on the enterprise side. I think they're just going to be creating, talking with Anthropic, Since they're moving things through a cloud and they're already managing themselves, I think they're gonna create like some sort of open cloud version that's gonna be very limited to destruction, to destructive things like running commands, because most people don't care about that. It's just a very few minority. I love those things, but it's a very few minority. Or something like Hermes agent, and but it's gonna be that it's gonna connect to a bunch of services, to existing services, and the agent is gonna interact with it. And we can see that because Stripe and Cloudflare already can now create accounts by domains and deploy. And I think that's gonna stay in here because I would use them. I haven't used them yet because I haven't had any opportunity for me to create new Cloudflare thing. But I remember vibe coding an app which I was using called Brechar. I need to open source it soon, which helps me view the code diffs on my mobile, on a mobile friendly view. I have a young 1 year old, and I move a lot, and now I need to code on the mobile. So what I do is that I SSH onto my machine from my Android phone to my Mac. I know, such an incredible pairing, but I love Android. And SSH into my machine. I can run NeoVim into it, and I can run like Codex Spy, Claude Code, that they are much easier to work. Now with Whisper Flow that's available on Android, I can actually text to speech or text to code, and it's a very decent experience. But since I told you that I care a lot about the code quality, I got to see the diff before I tell it to proceed or not. So I created that the small app, and what I want to say about that is that that small app has a Cloudflare backend, and I remember that it was so good that I mean, so good at the output, not at the code level. It was so good because I even gave it, I think, was it access to Cloudflare? Oh, I gave it like SSH access. No, through Wrangler, it was able to enter to my Cloudflare machine, to my Cloudflare account, and debug the problem that I was having, and he came up with a solution and posted it back, and I was like so excited when he did that. And what I'm saying is that we're gonna see a lot of people doing that. We're gonna see a lot of people using their agents to interact with other services, and when web agents become a thing that's gonna be something big, when Microsoft decides to bring some sort of agentic capability, not the crap that Copilot is, like who in the world is going to write how am I going to do something in the settings when it should be doing it for you in the first place? That's something for another topic. I don't know. But whatever. And I'm seeing much more interactions, right? There's also going to be some sort of user experience that agents needs to follow you back on certain decisions. Like for example, if I'm researching on 10 or 15 different sites, I want you to give me the results and to present them in an UI that I'm able to interact with it. And I think that's going to be like on the form factor. With that, I'm saying that that's probably going to be one of those trends that's going to continue. It's going to evolve, and we can probably create applications that can leverage that. That both OpenAI and Anthropic are not able to harness it, and also Google. That through their products they won't be able to craft a really good experience, and I think that that's gonna be something really interesting. Although again, with all this powerful capabilities that each one of us have right now, the markets is also going to be very difficult to play. Especially the biggest problem that I'm seeing with all of these AI improvements, which I've seen that it's happening around the models, not the models themselves, like the harnesses, improvements to the harnesses, like better memory retrieval, like 6 or 7 different things. It's that a lot of great projects are gonna get buried because there's no way to know about them. There's so much noise, very little way to cut through them and to actually get to know them. And I've been visiting now. I have an OpenClaw instance running, which I every day I try to do a little bit more with it. But one of the things that I've asked it to do is like to create me like some sort of aggregate So very simple. Of the top Reddit posts, like in 4 or 5 different subreddits, like in Codex, in ChatGPT, OpenClaw, Hermes Agent, and what was it? Claude Code. Oh my God! Don't take my direct word for it, but I have like a couple of them, and it just comes back with all of the information, and I keep reading it, and there are things that are really exciting, but they get buried. They are upvoted high. There are some that are not high, upvoted, but are pretty interesting, and they just get lost. Maybe they may appear like in a Twitter thread, but then everybody forgets because there's a lot of things. Nobody knows exactly for sure, like what's gonna be the right way of doing things. We do know a couple of ways that are kind of wrong right now, but may be correct in a couple of months later. And and it's like it's crazy. So just to conclude, because I need to finish this stream and I need to get my thoughts better. I don't know how the entire ecosystem is going to play out. I think that we should definitely pay attention to how agents are going to be doing more things, and that they're going to be purchasing on behalf of the users, and that they're probably going to be interacting that once the big players have their own agentic system, like Minimax did with OpenClaw, like OpenAI comes with their own OpenClaw version with Hermes agents, and Anthropic does the same, and Google does the same. Is that how can we create the applications that these agents are going to interact with, or that we can hook into these agents that are going to allow for further interaction? That I think there's this new dynamic that a lot of applications are going to fall behind, and we can do the first mover advantage and create something really cool with it. That's one. The second thing is that we need to bet on where the future, on where we may think the future is going, but be very flexible and do like some sort of day trading on how the market is moving, so we can adjust properly, because best practices change really fast, and we will know for sure on the future if that's going to be it. But in my case, what am I doing right now? I'm still learning libraries, I'm still learning frameworks, I'm still using the LLMs for them to teach me and to understand, and I challenge them, they challenge me. I try to squeeze them. For example, I'm learning effect for backends on TypeScript. I wanted to know about it after hearing Matt Paycock talk a little bit. Though I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. Sorry, Matt. After I heard Matt mentioning effect, I checked it out. I've been using Nest.js. I've come from an ASP.NET background, and it's freaking cool. It's freaking awesome. It in fact lets me write very little code. But what I have done, I went to the through the documentation. I asked the LLM for examples. I accelerated my learning and my ingestion and understanding of the information. So, and I even began writing it manually so I can have the feel of it. And now I can ask the LM to follow the patterns that I know that are in good standing. So I'm going to continue doing that. I'm probably going to be also looking for different ways that we can build. It's like a personal brand, a niche, I don't know, something on the internet, but something that can become open and that can be useful to people. Because there's there's something that's never going to change, and it's that trust is the number one thing. And it's very interesting because I saw a post from Reddit today, kind of like resharing a tweet, that somebody told them that they generated an AI picture, which wasn't an AI picture of not a picture of a drawing, and everybody lost their minds. So I think that a lot of things are gonna get AI labeled because of the distrust that it has on the user. And the more authenticity is gonna be something like crappy, probably crappy editing to a certain extent. It's gonna like rise again. because it looks more authentic. Not saying that bad editing it's gonna be the the thing that we're gonna be looking for. No, no. Please continue doing all those B rolls and amazing sceneries, but that's gonna be instrumental. There's also gonna be a lot of people are gonna be falling behind. 100% sure with that. There's a huge knowledge gap that's happening, and I think that we can enter into that fray, helping people reduce that gap. Maybe like not necessarily creating certain applications, but or probably yes, probably we can create applications that create one-off and targeted applications, even if it's like for a chain of prompts that's going to happen, that's going to solve the to the end user something very targeted that was not feasible in the past. And there's a lot of unknowns that I think that the right stand that we need to take right now is for us to walk the first step, walk the first step, and see how things go. I don't want to go very philosophical, but in the end, nothing's gonna matter. Really, nothing's gonna matter. This flesh and body. I don't know about Brian Johnson. I don't know, but so far I'm doing a pretty bad job following his advice. I don't know, and but if death, which is the most likely thing, because so far nobody has escaped it, nothing's gonna matter. Nothing's gonna matter. But I know that we want to make our time in here as most enjoyable as possible, and avoid those repetitive things that we make us feel dead, right? But we gotta make that first step. I'm still very unclear on other things, on what should I work on where should I head next. But this is the first step. This is the first step. I wanted to break the mold, break the ice on bringing back this live stream, because it's been like 5 months since I stopped doing that, and I had a really good streak, and all because ChatGPT decided that I should have stopped doing that, maybe for a very long for a long time. But really, I think I'm gonna organize better my thoughts. I'm gonna be coming back to doing more live streams, more slicing them into shorts, and seeing where it actually takes us. I need to improve all my live stream setup. I need to do it. I know I'm currently like I sucked it up, and get into it, because we have to be excited for what's coming up next. We need to be excited for all the tools, all the possibilities that we have, and seeing the impact. There's going to be a lot of negatives, but it's up to us for us to make that change. So, guys, thank you very much for those who stayed until this late. Thank you. Follow me on X, on YouTube at Javi Asilis. I'm going to be posting more regularly. I still do not have a schedule. I gotta figure things out because I have my baby, a year and 3 months old, and I need to take care of my wife. I'm very family first, and I also love working with startups for a very long time. So thank you guys for listening to me. We're gonna get better, so you guys get the best information out there, and I want to be useful. If there are things that are bothering you right now, that you see that nobody's is dealing with them, please let send me a comment, like leave a comment down below, send me a message, and we'll work through it. We'll work through it. So have a great day or night. It's almost 11:30. I'm gonna go to bed. Following you, Brian. Well, I'm going to bed. And thank you. So take care. Love you guys. And remember, well, you won't remember this, but I'm always excellent and getting better. Thank you guys.